And I'm going to ask you some question that obviously then you can go into how you can.
All right.
Hold on a second. We're not quite ready to start, but go ahead. Keep the camera rolling. You can hold on a second. Okay. Okay. Let me pick a card.
All right.
Can I pick more than one card?
If you want.
Okay, I'm just going to pick one. And I picked the 10 of Swords.
Oh God! So
Now does that mean? Thanks.
Yeah, that's not good.
That's not the one.
Happy card.
If I could have picked one
Maybe
card.
I better pull one for you.
Yeah, and think about your question.
Make up a card. Give me a card. Give me something that's good.
King of Cups.
Oh.
Okay. Could be a water sign, kind, compassionate.
This guy's
often intellectual. And
this guy's having fish for dinner. It looks like.
Well,
he's got a cup.
Water.
He's got fish jumping up around him, and Okay, so back to this 10 of Swords.
That could take a whole.
How much time do I have?
10 of Swords is not a happy card. It's betrayal. It's backstabbing. It's having horrible things happen in one's life.
Somebody's in the picture. Somebody's hanging over a rock.
Oh my goodness!
With water flying around them, and there's swords that are like well, none of the swords are actually sticking into the person yet.
Well, they are in other decks. There's 10 swords sticking out of the person's back.
This is the kindly, the friendly deck.
That's why I said you don't want that one.
All right. So you want to pick a card for me?
Sure.
All right. Do I have to think of a question at all? Or?
Yeah, go ahead. You'll have to ask about your card, and hopefully yours will be happier than the sword sticking in the back.
All right.
Ooh, the lovers.
No, it's the priestess.
Whoa! Right here.
Oh, wow, that just flew out of there.
There's something in your future.
Apparently.
Yeah, it actually not only it just popped out on its own.
It did.
You know, this is the card I got a long time ago when I was told that I was going to be a priestess when I was still Christian. But this has a lot to do with the feminine divine, women's mysteries, the connection to the other side, the unseen forces, psychic forces. It's a very powerful card for a woman, and it's upright.
Cool.
And it could also have a literal interpretation of priestess.
Wow. Huh. Well, I know my grandmother, she was Italian, and like her friends would call her like a witch, and she would do all the, and she passed down stuff to me, that you're, sworn to secrecy, and it's passed down from generation to generation. So I've always kind of been, related to that somehow. But I don't know if it's a Italian form of
there is
Stregheria. I'm not sure, but it's something I've always been kind of fascinated and drawn to. So
it's interesting because lots of times folk magic did not go away,
right?
Despite the fact that the new religion had come in. So there's very much a history for it,
right?
In Italy.
So these swords,
right?
These swords.
These swords.
Swords cards are not fun.
Should I be walking around now, checking my back periodically, looking for?
I don't know. Maybe, be careful.
Or maybe.
Cross your T's and dot your I's.
Oh, David! Stop.
What are you doing?
It jabbed me in the ear. Look at that. Wait. Hold on a second. I'll pull a quarter out of there in a second.
Stop it.
Pull a quarter out.
Oh my goodness! I'm not not very good with this. Okay.
So I'm gonna have to.
Okay, here's a question.
Yeah, okay. Let's
moving right along.
Passed along in the DNA. I mean, like, let's say, my grandmother, and then could it be passed to the bloodline?
Well, it's not being a witch that's passed through the bloodline, and being a witch is a choice. But in terms of psychic ability,
right?
Lots of times that is hereditary. It's passed on in families, like me finding out that Nana read tea leaves.
Right.
She was apparently very good at it, but she read them in the church of all things.
Right.
Apparently, many proper Victorian ladies do. What did once upon a time. So and I found out that also too, my second cousin also has the second sight, and she said that she and her sister send her mom like birthday cards, both the same kind.
Huh.
And here they are, they're in entirely different places, and they're both like sending mom the same birthday card.
Right.
They picked out the same one.
Well, that's interesting.
It's silly stuff like that.
A sort of psychic connection.
Right. Yeah, there is a psychic connection. There seems to be a little bit of something going on my father's side too, but that's not really defined. It's not like I could say that there was somebody who was a great reader or anything like that. So, they say lots of times when a baby is born with the veil, the caul over its face, that it's fey, that they have the second sight.
What's the veil? What's that?
They're saying that the caul is actually the veil. But of course, a lot of babies are not allowed to be born naturally anymore. So it's very hard. Even for myself, I don't know. The doctors apparently had other ideas when I was born, and it was pretty obnoxious. I guess they were still using forceps and everything at the time. So if I did have a veil, who knows?
Yeah. Right.
No way to tell. So a lot of the things that they might do, folklore that's been handed down with that, we have to sometimes look at it and say, okay, well, we've got modern methods now as well, and we have to roll with that.
Right.
Sometimes you might be able to find things in somebody's hands, like with palmistry.
Right.
A friend of mine who's a masseuse, she freaked out. She said the first time that she looked at my hands when she was giving me a massage, because I had all these M's, these little psychic M's all over my hands.
Sort of like
it's something I never paid attention to.
I've heard about lifelines and whatnot, and how they can at least give some guidance as far as what to anticipate and how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Is that sort of like that?
A little bit. But lots of times you can tell on your hand, like some of the gifts and stuff that you're born with.
Right.
The abilities you might have. I was talking, one woman was giving a lecture on palmistry, and now mind you now, I'm not a palmist. She was talking about the lines of Apollo. I have like 3 lines here, and I got them 3 over here too. She said those were lines of healing. And I was like, all right. Because healing is something I've been doing for a while. I started doing Reiki when I was 19.
Right.
So I've been doing that for a while.
You have some background in Reiki, don't you?
Yeah, I'm a Reiki master too, and a massage therapist. So.
Very cool.
Yeah, so I've been working with healing, like I said, because of my grandmother. I've always been fascinated by the healing power of just touch and on an energetic level, just because I feel I feel it's in my blood or in that tradition, but I feel I've gotten a lot of it from her. So it's something
That's cool.
Yeah. So I don't read palms either, but it's funny. I have gone to a psychic who she writes letters on your hand. If she sees a letter, she'll write it on your palm with a pen. But did the woman say what the M's stood for?
It's psychic.
Oh, okay.
It's psychic ability.
Okay, it was an indication that you had a higher level of psychic ability than the average person.
Yeah, and she was surprised because she said she never saw so many M's in somebody's palm before.
Wow.
So it's something because I've read some books on it. I've gone through things a couple of times, but I've never really truly fully explored it. One of the reasons being is because lots of times I think it's more useful. I think when somebody is younger, for maybe telling them, what their path might be, or, maybe when they might get married, or how many children they might have, that sort of thing.
Right.
But, seeing that I'm kind of like past that stage, a lot of us are, it's like, it might not be too useful in terms of it's going to tell you stuff that you already know about yourself.
Oh.
Yeah.
Can it predict things like adoptions? Because adoption is just another alternative form of bringing a young child into your life.
Well, for me, I don't think it would show ferrets on my palm.
Ferrets.
You got ferrets, okay.
How many ferrets am I going to have?
So you're ferrets now.
Yeah, so the fur kids are the kids that I've got.
Furry kids,
that's it.
Well, it's interesting because in the past, historically, there have been unfortunately burning or hanging of witches in our New England. Do you think it was a way of women were seen as becoming too strong and taking power away from women?
I think that's part of it.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of misogyny even now. I mean, it's a common thread.
Right.
I butt up against that a lot, just even being a woman in a position of leadership in a supposed to be female honoring community, and that isn't always the case.
Interesting.
Because this is our culture that we grow up in. We grow up in a very patriarchal culture where people don't even question it, and they don't even realize that their responses might actually be in response to that culture. They don't think about it.
Right.
So I think that was part of it. Another motivation is really the superstition, the fear. I think people were in a new country, and I think that they were no longer exposed, I think, to probably higher culture anymore. There wasn't really even law of the land. I mean, when the first witch hanging happened here in Connecticut, in the New World, Connecticut didn't exist yet.
Wow.
The United States didn't exist yet.
Yeah, it was still a colony.
So, at that point, I'm seeing a lot of afraid people.
Oh, yeah.
Who probably weren't too clear on whether or not they were even going to get through the next winter.
Right.
And when they start having things happen, people will fall back to superstitious means if they're not educated. Like somebody hexed my cow and my cow can't give milk now.
Right,
that kind of nonsense.
Right.
People have always been looking for reasons why events happen in the world around us and try to pin it on somebody.
Scapegoating.
Scapegoating, exactly.
Well, we still do it now.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
just, even racially, there's a lot of division. I think that's because of the tradition of scapegoating that just doesn't seem to get away from us, ever.
Right.
It's always somebody's fault.
Right. And they chose witches just because they were different, or
well, this all came originally out of the deliberate mistranslation from King James. In the Bible, of "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live," and it's actually assassin or poisoner is really what it's meant to be. Somebody who would say maybe be a well poisoner, that somebody might kill an entire village.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with witchcraft. It's just he had his own personal agenda, and that is what he wrote in.
Right.
Yeah. That is...
No, I mean, because I think, like you said, pagan religions is all about nature and worshiping the earth, and somehow we all got away from that, because I think traditionally all cultures started out closer to the earth, and then just little by little. Now, what do you think it was? That they wanted us not to be connected to the earth anymore as a way to control us, or...
No, I think there's an innate fear there. I think there's an innate fear of women. I think there's an innate fear of life, of the process that creates it. That these things are uncontrollable. Nature is uncontrollable.
Right, yeah.
I think a lot of people have sought to define it, to try and control it, to try and explain it. But I think that's one of the things that from Christianity that is maybe on some level almost disappointed me right from the get-go, is the focus. There was no focus on what God had created. There was no focus on the divine, really in nature. And there's this whole churchianity thing going that has nothing to do with Christianity.
Churchianity rather than Christianity. So when you say churchianity, it's like the folks that are in the dominant portion of that particular religion. It sounds like
there becomes almost a different religion that grows out of churchianity rather than Christianity, because people are following what they believe to be the tenets of their particular denomination. And that may actually be very far from the truth of what Christianity is actually explaining in the Bible. This whole nonsense of trying to persecute people, or even, saying that, okay, for religious reasons we have the right to discriminate against women, against people that are lesbian, gay, or bisexual. You know, it's like, where are you guys getting all this stuff from?
Right, of course, yeah.
It's like, what did Jesus say? He said to love everybody.
Right.
Well, they drag stuff out of the Old Testament, which is a testament of the angry and vengeful God, as opposed to the loving and compassionate God. So these people that supposedly are Christians are not even looking at the New Testament, except for Revelations, of course, which tells about the all the cataclysms that await us at the end.
Yeah,
but,
and that gets kind of crazy too.
That sure does.
I mean, like the Hebrew word for what we interpret as being hell is really just the grave. You know, there's no place of eternal damnation. That's all a farce.
Right, yeah, to control us.
Yeah.
But that came from churchianity. That had nothing to do with Christianity. And you know, for me, it's a very strange thing to look at, because to say that somebody's soul might not even exist if they didn't believe in Jesus as their Savior, it's just... I think that was the big hardcore cut for me, was when I was doing Bible study and somebody's uncle had died, and it's like the guy was beside himself, he was flipping out. We're like, no, your uncle's in a better place, he'll be okay. And then he was like, no, you don't understand, he didn't accept Jesus and God, and you know. And we were like, what? And I was like, what? Because the other people were like, gasp, and I'm like, so that's okay.
Right. Yeah.
You know, Jesus forgives everybody, and he'll go on.
And that leads me to thinking about the new Pope, who is I guess he's voted best Pope of all time already, because he doesn't demand things of you, doesn't demand you follow church doctrine. You don't have to necessarily believe certain things or profess to believe certain things in order to get into heaven. There's a place for everybody. And he says a lot of things like that kind of rubbed a lot of people in the church the wrong way, but it is much more like Jesus would have taught.
Because he's actually talking about Christianity and the teachings of Jesus. He's not talking about churchianity.
Yeah.
Which I think is just too radical for a lot of people to accept.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are becoming disillusioned with the Catholic Church in order to keep his parishioners. You know, something has to change,
and he's made some pretty incredible changes, some pretty impressive changes.
Yes.
Now, I know a lot of evangelical Christians, and a lot of them, especially the younger ones, are not embracing Wiccan, but they're focused. They focus on the earth, and they focus on what they perceive to be their job to protect and defend nature and our planet, and that's a very good thing, I think.
Yeah, that's a very good thing. It's unusual, I think, in terms of that being any kind of doctrine.
Yeah.
Because that's not typically what I really find.
No, and that's not what people think necessarily about evangelical Christians, but particularly the younger ones are very, very focused on protecting the environment. They consider themselves the keepers of the planet.
Well, so do the Native
job.
Americans, very much so.
Yeah, the respect for the land.
And I'm glad that people have become as active as they have, and they're putting their voices forward. You know, that they've decided to be idle no more. I think it's important. I think all of us are getting closer to that final hour. You know, it was interesting. I did an interview with Starhawk just about a month ago, and I asked her, do you think that we're in the 11th hour? And she's like, yeah, I think we are. I think we're about 5 minutes left in the 11th hour, and we're right there at the end. We've been hearing
that been hearing that since the beginning of
we have, but if you really look at the science, we're in trouble. Total trouble. And people, I don't know, I keep reposting these things on Facebook, and I wonder if people even read them. But, we really have to do something now, because there's all these other reasons. It's not just ecology, it's not just saving the animals. If we keep allowing global warming to happen, we're not going to have a habitable planet for humans. The Earth will go on happily without us, but, we won't be here anymore.
You know what people
the
bring up
dinosaurs.
as a counter to that, and I think it shows a lot of lack of foresight on their part and a lot of kind of a narrow worldview, is they'll say, well, we hear the word global, and then they'll pick out, well, the other day in Phoenix it was 10 degrees below the average temperature. They'll pick and choose. They'll cherry pick facts to try to counteract the overall notion that as a planet, the planet is warmer, and it does matter, and there are a lot more major, if you look at it over a 10-year period, more major tornadoes. You see a lot of things happening that really paint a very tough picture overall, but they don't. But they want to cherry pick individual factoids to counter that, and it's unfortunate because I don't know what their they obviously they say that our objective in talking about global climate change or global warming is some sort of domination of the planet and this one world, one government baloney that they throw out there. But very true. It's very accurate that over since we've been burning fossil fuels, things have definitely increasingly become difficult, and China's finding that out now. And hopefully they'll smarten up before they cloud themselves over.
We have to unplug from fossil fuels.
Yeah. And back to the original fuel, which was the sun, which is where we get all our
the wind,
which is all the things that gave us that caused there to be fossil fuel, the sun and the degradation of plant and animal life, and covered over, and a million years later you've got oil, or 100 million years later you've got oil, but it all goes back to the sun. Yeah, and that's what a lot of these rituals are about. I think the people, the sun, the moon, the cycles of the earth, and people were dependent on those for growing their crops, and it was just all about being, worshiping earth and what it provided, and now we're so detached from that. Yeah.
Growing up as a kid, we had a dairy farm out behind us, behind our backyard. We had, garden, we had trees, we had, different berry bushes and things, and we had ducks, geese, and chickens. And you get used to the cycle of things, you know. You know when you're supposed to harvest stuff. You know what you need to do for the animals. You're aware of the changes that are actually happening on more of a day-to-day basis. I expect, even more so like somebody like who's actually a farmer who's out there in the weather and in the elements and everything every single day, is even more connected to that. Of course. But we do live in a society where we don't really have that connection anymore. No. So we don't have that connection to the land. Some people don't even know where milk comes from. Right, I know.
It comes from a milk carton.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It comes from 7-Eleven, right? Yeah. Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, they have to have pictures of the cows on the carton so that they understand the connection. So I don't think that it's really good for ourselves to divorce ourselves from nature. I think it's really unhealthy. Right. And unfortunately, because we've also divorced ourselves from nature, I think we haven't seen the reason to preserve nature. We haven't seen the balance in it. We haven't learned the responsibility of it. Yeah. So I think lots of times when they start doing these educational things for kids and they take them out, into a farm or the woods, and they start teaching them, that this is how you live with the woods, or this is how you plant things on a farm. I think it's good because it gives them that connection, that sense of responsibility to the earth, because we do have that responsibility to the earth. We can't go anyplace else. Right, exactly. They can talk about going to Mars, but I think we'd lose our minds if we went there. I can't see people mentally surviving in that environment. Right. I just can't.
No, better to take care of your home rather than look for a new home.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, hopefully, we'll start. I mean, do you think it's possible to, right now, with your temple, or to reintroduce these concepts to people? Do you think little by little?
Well, that's what I keep doing. I keep educating. Right. It can be through classes, it can be through our Beltane festival, and I try and get a really good teachers in, not just big name people or something like that,
right.
but really good people that you need to
and
hear
again,
that
a shout out to keepersoftheflametv.com, which we have up on the screen.
Right.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's our public access television show, because, the idea is all about the message and to educate the public.
Right.
So, for those elders and authors, leaders that are interviewed, I think that they have a message for the next generation coming up that they need to hear. And for the average person with the shows, I think that there's a message there that they need to hear because they need to understand who we are.
And you're on YouTube as well?
Yes.
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 Okay. And there was one more thing that you talked about, how in this, well, I guess you wouldn't really call it a religion, but women can get, and men, can women be as high as men in this?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, is there ever a high priestess and a high priest, or is it just one? Okay.
But that's the thing. There's still, as far as my tradition is concerned, there's still only one captain of the ship.
Okay.
So even if you have somebody that's
one or the other, then
somebody has to lead, and that makes sense to me.
Right. Yeah.
So heavens forbid that there was a divorce or something. You don't need. I've already been that route, and that was terrible. Just without even being the same tradition. I wouldn't even want to think about that, entering into the magic as well.
Huh.
So I think I'd definitely want to keep that separate, Doing the magic together, teaching, being a priest or priestess, and leading are different things.
Wow.
If you're going to be doing leading, you're doing all sorts of other things that typically a priest or priestess wouldn't do. And I think that's also the experience of anybody that runs like a church or a temple or a large organization. You're going to be running around making sure that even your website bill is paid for.
Yeah, of course.
Try and gather people together, sending out mailings. That this has nothing to do with the religion itself, but you have to do a lot of.
And with that, we're going to have to call it a show. Thank you for joining us, Alicia.
Thank you.
Alicia Lyon Forbearth.
Fascinating.
And co-host Emily Volpintesta and David Stevenson. I think I am, at least.
Yes.
I'm still looking for the swords in my back, though.